Captain Kim Soo was drinking his morning coffee when the communication panel started beeping like crazy. He almost ignored it. Deep space gets weird signals all the time. Old satellites, solar flares, sometimes even ghost echoes from ships that jumped to hyperspace years ago. But something about this signal felt different. The static was thick, making his speakers crackle and pop. Sue turned up the volume and leaned closer to the console. Through all that noise, he could barely make out a human voice. It sounded terrified. "This is Commander Park Jin of the colony ship New Dawn," the voice said, breaking up every few words. "If anyone can hear this, we need help." Sue's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. The New Dawn had been missing for 3 months. The military had sent search teams, but they found nothing. Most people figured the ship had suffered some kind of engine failure and was floating dead somewhere in the void between stars. The transmission kept going, getting clearer for a moment. "The colony is overrun. These things, they're not like anything we've seen before. They don't want to kill us. They're taking everyone alive." A chill ran down Sue's spine. He quickly started recording the signal and sent an alert to his communications officer. This was way above his pay grade. But he couldn't just ignore it. Park Jin's voice came through again, more desperate now. "They're loading people into their ships. Families, workers, everyone. But the children. Oh God, they're taking the children. First they seem to want the young ones most." The fear in Jin's voice was real. Sue had been in the military for 15 years, and he knew what genuine terror sounded like. This wasn't some elaborate hoax or training exercise. Something terrible was happening out there. Suddenly, the background noise changed. Instead of just static, Sue could hear other sounds. Screaming, running footsteps, and then something else. A high-pitched whining noise that definitely wasn't human technology. It sounded like energy weapons charging up. "They found me," Jin whispered into his communicator. "If you get this message, warn Earth. Tell them these creatures are organized. They have a plan. This isn't random. They're collecting us for something." The whining sound got louder. Sue gripped his coffee cup so tight his knuckles turned white. "My name is Commander Park Jin, service number 7743. Tell my wife and kids that The transmission cut off with a burst of that alien weapon fire. Then nothing but empty static filled the bridge. Sue sat there for a long moment, staring at the communication console. The recording was still running, capturing nothing but dead air. His hands were shaking slightly as he reached over to stop it. He'd been a communications officer for most of his career. He'd handled distress calls before, reports of pirate attacks, engine failures, medical emergencies. But this was different. This was something that could change everything humanity thought it knew about the galaxy. The coffee in his cup had gone cold, but Sue didn't notice. He was already reaching for the priority communication. Channel 2 Fleet Command, Captain Kim Soo, was drinking his morning coffee when the communication panel started beeping like crazy. He almost ignored it. Deep space gets weird signals all the time. Old satellites, solar flares, sometimes even ghost echoes from ships that jumped to hyperspace years ago. But something about this signal felt different. The static was thick, making his speakers crackle and pop. Sue turned up the volume and leaned closer to the console. Through all that noise, he could barely make out a human voice. It sounded terrified. "This is Commander Park Jin of the colony ship New Dawn," the voice said, breaking up every few words. "If anyone can hear this, we need help." Sue's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. The New Dawn had been missing for 3 months. The military had sent search teams, but they found nothing. Most people figured the ship had suffered some kind of engine failure and was floating dead somewhere in the void between stars. The transmission kept going, getting clearer for a moment. "The colony is overrun. These things, they're not like anything we've seen before. They don't want to kill us. They're taking everyone alive." A chill ran down Sue's spine. He quickly started recording the signal and sent an alert to his communications officer. This was way above his pay grade. But he couldn't just ignore it. Park Jin's voice came through again, more desperate now. They're loading people into their ships. Families, workers, everyone. But the children. Oh God, they're taking the children. First they seem to want the young ones most. The fear in Jin's voice was real. Sue had been in the military for 15 years, and he knew what genuine terror sounded like. This wasn't some elaborate hoax or training exercise. Something terrible was happening out there. Suddenly, the background noise changed. Instead of just static, Sue could hear other sounds. Screaming, running footsteps, and then something else. A high-pitched whining noise that definitely wasn't human technology. It sounded like energy weapons charging up. "They found me," Jin whispered into his communicator. "If you get this message, warn Earth. Tell them these creatures are organized. They have a plan. This isn't random. They're collecting us for something." The whining sound got louder. Sue gripped his coffee cup so tight his knuckles turned white. "My name is Commander Park Jin, service number 7743. Tell my wife and kids that The transmission cut off with a burst of that alien weapon fire. Then nothing but empty static filled the bridge. Sue sat there for a long moment, staring at the communication console. The recording was still running, capturing nothing but dead air. His hands were shaking slightly as he reached over to stop it. He'd been a communications officer for most of his career. He'd handled distress calls before, reports of pirate attacks, engine failures, medical emergencies. But this was different. This was something that could change everything humanity thought it knew about the galaxy. The coffee in his cup had gone cold, but Sue didn't notice. He was already reaching for the priority communication channel to Fleet Command, Intelligence. Officer Choi Min had been staring at computer screens for 18 hours straight, and his eyes felt like sandpaper. Empty coffee cups covered his desk, along with data tablets showing information from 13 different colony worlds. What he was discovering made his hands shake every time he reached for another cup. The metal fragments that Lieutenant Lee Na had brought back from Harmony Colony were unlike anything in human databases. Under the microscope, the material looked almost organic, with tiny channels running through it, like blood vessels. But the real breakthrough came when Min ran the energy signature tests. Computer cross-reference biosignature pattern, AlphaSet. With all missing colony reports from the past 5 years, he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The results made him sit up straight. 12 matches, 12 colonies that had gone dark. Their populations vanished without explanation. Places like New Haven, Prosperity Station, Green Valley Settlement, all of them had reported similar metal fragments in their final transmissions. Min pulled up the colony records one by one. New Haven had been home to 50,000 people. Their last message mentioned strange visitors, who seemed friendly at first. Then nothing. Prosperity Station housed 75,000 miners and their families. Their final transmission talked about tall figures offering to help with their equipment problems. The pattern was becoming clear, and it terrified him. Computer, calculate total missing population from all affected colonies. The number that appeared on his screen made him feel sick. 1.2 million people. Gone. Not dead. There were no bodies, no signs of fighting at any of the sites. Just empty buildings, and lives cut short. Min started digging deeper into the timeline. The first disappearance had happened 3 years, and 4 months ago, a small research station called Havens Point, only 200 people. Everyone assumed it was just an equipment failure. These remote stations went dark sometimes, but now Min could see it was the beginning of something much worse. The attacks were getting bigger and more frequent. In the first year, they took small outposts with a few hundred people each. By the second year, they were hitting medium-sized colonies with thousands of residents. Now they were going after major settlements with tens of thousands of inhabitants. What scared Min most was how organized it all seemed. These weren't random raids or accidents. Someone was planning this, studying human colonies, and picking targets systematically. They were learning from each attack, getting better at it. He created a new file and labeled it Operation Harvest. The name felt right. These creatures were treating humans like crops to be collected. Min ran another search, this time looking for any survivors from the missing colonies. The computer worked for several minutes before showing results that chilled him to the bone. 0 confirmed deaths, 0 bodies recovered, 0 escape pods found. That meant all those people were probably still alive somewhere. Over 1 million human beings, taken from their homes and transported to some unknown location. Families torn apart, children separated from parents, entire communities wiped off the map. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his wife Jung-ae, his 2 young daughters. Were they safe? How long before these harvesters decided that Earth itself looked like an attractive target? Min's hands moved quickly across his keyboard as he compiled his report. Fleet Command needed to see this immediately. This wasn't just about a few missing colonies anymore. This was about the survival of humanity itself. The evidence was clear. Something out there was hunting humans, and they were getting very good at it. Fleet Admiral Yang Ho sat alone in his office, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The Soul's Pride hummed quietly around him as it drifted through space, but he barely noticed. His full attention was focused on the tablet in his hands. Reading Officer Choi Min's report for the 3rd time, the numbers were staggering. Over 1 million people gone, 13 colonies completely empty, and the attacks were getting worse, happening more often. Ho had seen plenty of threats during his 30 years in the fleet, but nothing like this. He scrolled through the list of missing colonies, reading each name carefully. New Haven, Prosperity Station, Green Valley Settlement. Each one represented thousands of families who had trusted the military to keep them safe. Families who are now gone. Then he saw it. New Busan Research Station. Ho's hands started shaking. He set the tablet down and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. New Busan had gone dark 6 months ago. The official report said it was probably a communication equipment failure. These remote stations lost contact sometimes. It happened. The military had sent a low-priority investigation team, but they were still 3 months away from reaching the station. His son Kim Jun worked at New Busan. Brilliant kid, 28 years old, with a doctorate in xenobiology. He'd been so excited when he got the assignment, talking about all the discoveries he might make studying alien plant life on the rim worlds. Ho pulled up his personal files and found the last message from Jun. It was 4 weeks before the station went dark. Jun looked happy in the video, talking about his research and asking about his mother's health. He'd mentioned that some interesting visitors had stopped by the station, claiming to be traders from a distant system. The Admiral felt his stomach drop, the same pattern Min had identified. Friendly contact, followed by complete disappearance. Ho walked back to his desk and activated his personal communication console. For a moment, he considered calling his wife, telling her what he suspected about Jun, but what could he say? That their son was probably alive, but captured by alien creatures, that he might never see home again. Instead, Ho opened the Fleet Command channel. Standard military protocol said he should request permission from Earth Command before taking any major action. He should form a committee, study the problem, develop a careful response plan. It could take months to get approval for a proper rescue mission. But Ho looked at that colony list again, saw New Busan at the bottom, and made a decision that would change everything. His fingers moved across the control panel, opening a channel to every human ship within communication range. Military vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining ships, corporate security fleets, everyone. "This is Fleet Admiral Yang Ho aboard the Soul's Pride," he said. His voice steady, despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. I am issuing an immediate general mobilization order to all human vessels. We have confirmed evidence of systematic attacks on our colonies by hostile alien forces." He paused, thinking about Jun, about all the missing families, about the million people who needed someone to come for them. Over 1 million of our people have been taken from their homes. They're still alive, and we're going to bring them back. All ships, military and civilian, report for immediate mobilization. This is not a request. This is a call to arms. Ho closed the channel and sat back in his chair. He'd just broken about 50 military regulations and probably ended his career. But if there was even a chance that Jun and all those other people were still alive somewhere, he didn't care about regulations. Captain Kong Su couldn't believe what she was seeing on her ship's display screen. When Admiral Yang Ho's call went out 12 hours ago, she figured maybe a few dozen military ships would respond. She was wrong, very wrong. Her cargo hauler Iron Mountain sat in the middle of what looked like the biggest gathering of human ships in history. Everywhere she looked, more vessels were jumping out of hyperspace and joining the growing fleet. The sight gave her chills. "Captain, I'm getting reports from all sectors," her communications officer called out. "We've got everything from Earth defense battleships to asteroid mining rigs out there." Kong Su nodded, still staring at the display. She could see the massive outline of the battleship New Seoul, its weapon systems gleaming under the distant starlight. Next to it, a converted ore hauler, called Lucky Strike, bristled with improvised missile launchers. The contrast was incredible, but somehow it worked. Her own ship wasn't much to look at. The Iron Mountain had been hauling machine parts and food supplies between colonies for 15 years. But when Ho's message came through, Kong Su didn't hesitate. She dumped her cargo at the nearest station, picked up a squad of volunteer Marines, and headed for the rally point. "Ma'am, we're getting a transmission from that corporate security ship," her officer said, pointing to a sleek black vessel. Nearby. Kong Su opened the channel. "This is Captain Park, from Daewoo Corporation Security Fleet," a woman's voice said. "We just abandoned a convoy protection contract to be here. Our shareholders are going to be furious, but some things are more important than money." Similar stories were coming in from all over the fleet. Mining companies had sent their entire security divisions. Passenger liner captains had converted their luxury ships into troop transports. Even some of the smaller personal yachts had shown up, their wealthy owners demanding to help however they could. The most surprising arrivals were the civilian volunteers. Kong Su watched as a family transport ship called Sweet Home docked with a military supply vessel. The captain was a retired teacher named Lee, who had converted his ship's passenger compartments into medical bays. His wife and teenage children were helping load medical supplies. "We heard about the missing colonies," Lee explained over the radio. "Our daughter's best friend was on New Haven when it disappeared. We can't just sit at home while people need help." By hour 18, the fleet had grown to nearly 3,000 ships. Admiral Ho was coordinating from the Soul's Pride, trying to organize the massive collection of vessels into something resembling a military force. It wasn't easy. Most of these ships had never worked together before. Kong Su listened to the command frequencies as Ho's staff tried to sort out the logistics nightmare. How do you supply 3,000 ships? How do you coordinate an attack with vessels that range from state-of-the-art military cruisers to converted garbage haulers? But despite the chaos, something amazing was happening. Ship captains who had been rivals in the cargo business were sharing supplies and coordinates. Corporate executives were taking orders from military officers half their age. Rich yacht owners were working alongside rough asteroid miners. The one thing they all had in common was determination. Everyone in the fleet had heard the stories about the missing colonies. Many had friends or family members who had disappeared. They weren't here for glory or profit. They were here to bring their people home. "Captain," her communications officer called out. "Admiral Ho is requesting all ship commanders report to the flagship for mission briefing." Kang Su straightened her uniform and headed for the shuttle bay. She was about to become part of the largest rescue mission in human history. Commander Yoon Da had managed supply lines for military fleets before, but nothing like this. 3,000 ships of every size and type, all needing fuel, food, ammunition, and repairs. Her logistics team worked around the clock, trying to keep the massive armada moving through deep space without falling apart. Commander, the mining hauler rock crusher is reporting engine problems, her assistant called out from across the command center. They're falling behind the main formation. Yunda checked her displays. The rock crusher was one of dozens of converted civilian ships that were struggling to keep up with the military vessels. Their engines weren't designed for long-distance travel at high speed. Route them to the Soul's Pride for emergency repairs, she ordered, and check on the other civilian ships. I don't want anyone getting left behind. The fleet had been following the alien energy signatures for 6 days now, jumping deeper into uncharted space. Each jump took them further from human territory, into regions where no human ship had ever traveled. The star charts showed nothing but empty space ahead, but the trail was getting stronger. Whatever technology these harvesters used, it left traces that human sensors could follow, like breadcrumbs leading through a dark forest. Except this forest was filled with unknown dangers. Yoon Da watched the formation displays as the fleet prepared for another hyperspace jump. The military ships formed the core, their heavy weapons and shields ready for combat. Around them, the converted civilian vessels stayed in protective formations, their improvised weapons systems powered and ready. All ships report ready for jump, her communications officer announced. Execute jump, Admiral Ho's voice came through the fleet channel. The stars stretched and blurred as 3,000 ships jumped together into hyperspace. For a few seconds, they existed in that strange space between the real universe and somewhere else entirely. Then reality snapped back, and they emerged in a system unlike anything Yoon Da had ever seen. The star at the center was dead, a cold brown dwarf that gave off barely any light, but something massive orbited around it, something that definitely wasn't natural. Yoon Da stared at her screens as the sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. My God, whispered Captain Kim from the sensor station. It's huge. The structure was the size of a small moon, a complex web of metallic corridors and chambers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Strange lights pulsed along its surface, and massive docking bays dotted its hull. It looked like a city built in space, but designed by minds that didn't think like humans. Commander, Kim called out, his voice shaking. I'm reading life signs, lots of them. Yoon Da moved to his station and looked at the readings. The numbers kept climbing as the sensors got a better lock on the facility. 100,000 human life signs, 200,000, 300,000. How many? She asked quietly. Kim's hands moved across his controls, fine-tuning the sensors. Over 700,000 confirmed human life signs, Commander. Maybe more in the sections we can't scan properly. A hush fell over the command center. 700,000 people. Nearly all of the missing colonists were inside that alien structure, alive but imprisoned. Families who had been torn from their homes. Children separated from parents. Entire communities held captive by creatures they didn't understand. Yoon Da looked around at her staff. These were experienced military officers who had seen combat, faced impossible odds, dealt with life and death decisions. But right now, they looked overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were facing. The facility was enormous, heavily defended, and filled with human prisoners. Getting them out would require the largest rescue operation in history. Fought in unknown territory against an enemy they barely understood. But those were their people inside that structure. Human beings who were counting on someone to come for them. Admiral Ho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, looking out at the massive alien facility that held so many human lives. His communications officer had opened channels to all 3,000 ships in the fleet. Every captain, every crew member, every volunteer who had answered his call was listening. "This is Admiral Yang Ho," he began, his voice steady, despite the weight of the moment. "6 months ago, my son sent me a message from his research station. He was excited about his work, asked about his mother's cooking, complained about the food at his base. It was just a normal conversation between a father and son." Ho paused, watching the alien structure rotate slowly in the darkness. Strange lights pulsed along its surface like a mechanical heartbeat. 4 weeks later, his station went dark. "We thought it was equipment failure. We were wrong. He's in there, along with 700,000 other people. Our neighbors, our friends, our families. They took our children from their schools, parents from their homes, entire communities from the worlds we built together." Captain Enru listened from the bridge of her destroyer in. Her ship was one of the fastest in the fleet, designed for quick strikes and rapid movement. Around her, the crew made final preparations for battle, checking weapons systems, and plotting attack courses. "These creatures think we're just livestock to be collected," Ho continued. "They think they can take our people, and we'll do nothing about it. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The Admiral's voice grew stronger, carrying across the vast fleet. "We didn't come here for conquest or territory. We came for our families. We came to bring our people home. Today, we show these harvesters what happens when you threaten humanity." Enru checked her tactical display. The alien facility was heavily defended, with weapons platforms scattered across its hull, and fighter craft patrolling the perimeter. It would be like attacking a heavily fortified city, except this city was floating in space and filled with unknown technology. "All ships, this is Admiral Ho. Execute Attack Plan Delta. Small craft and destroyers, begin your approach. Draw there, fire, and create openings for the heavy ships. Today, we take them back." The fleet erupted into motion. Fast destroyers like the Inchin accelerated toward the facility, their engines blazing bright blue in the darkness. Behind them, converted cargo haulers and mining ships followed, their improvised weapons systems charging up for combat. Enru felt her stomach drop as her ship dove toward the alien structure. The facility was even bigger up close, its metal corridors and chambers stretching out like a mechanical spiderweb. Strange symbols covered its hull, glowing with an eerie light. "Incoming fire," her weapons officer shouted, the facility's defense. Systems came alive. Beams of purple energy lanced out toward the approaching human ships. Enru threw her destroyer into an evasive roll, feeling the artificial gravity struggle to compensate. One of the energy beams passed so close to her ship that it scorched the hull plating. "Return fire," she ordered. "Target those weapon platforms." The Inchin's missiles streaked toward the alien facility, followed by similar attacks from dozens of other ships. Explosions bloomed across the structure's surface as human weapons found their targets, but for every weapon platform they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Behind the first wave, the heavy battleships moved into position. Their massive guns were designed to crack open enemy vessels or bombard planetary targets. Today, they would be used to break down the walls of an alien prison. The battle for 700,000 human lives had begun. The human fleet hit the alien facility like an avalanche. Captain Enru watched from her destroyer's bridge as wave after wave of ships smashed through the harvester defenses. The aliens had powerful weapons, but they hadn't expected to face 3,000 ships at once. Direct hit on their main defense grid, her weapons officer shouted over the noise of battle. Explosions rippled across the facility's hull as human missiles found their targets. The alien structure was massive, but it was taking a beating from the concentrated firepower of the entire fleet. Sergeant Bay 1 gripped his assault rifle as his transport ship approached one of the facility's docking bays. Through the reinforced windows, He could see the alien structure up close. It was even more disturbing than the long-range scans had shown. Organic-looking metal that seemed to pulse like living tissue, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. 2 minutes to boarding. The pilot called back to the Marine compartment. Baywan looked around at his squad. 20 Marines, all volunteers, all determined to bring their people home. Some were career military like himself, others were security, guards from cargo ships who had never seen real combat. But they all had the same look in their eyes, cold fury at what had been done to human colonists. The transport shuddered as it crashed through the facility's docking bay shields. Sparks flew as the alien defense systems tried to stop them, but the ship's armor held. They landed hard on the deck of the alien structure, and Baywan was the first one out the door. The inside of the facility was like walking through a nightmare. The corridors were too tall, designed for creatures much larger than humans. Strange lights pulsed in the walls, and the air smelled like metal and something else, something organic and wrong. But, worst of all, was the sound. Hundreds of voices echoing through the passages, speaking in human languages, calling for help. This way. Baywan pointed down a corridor where the voices seemed strongest. His squad moved quickly, weapons ready. Following the sound of their captured people, they found the first group of humans in a chamber that looked like a laboratory. Men, women, and children sat in transparent containers filled with some kind of liquid. They were alive, conscious, but their eyes were different, glowing slightly with an unnatural light. Tubes and wires connected them to alien machines that hummed with unknown energy. "Get them out of there," Baywan ordered, his voice shaking with rage, as his Marines worked to free the prisoners. Baywan saw more disturbing details. Some of the humans had small devices implanted under their skin. Others had scars from surgical procedures. The aliens hadn't just captured these people, they had been experimenting on them, changing them somehow. One of the freed prisoners grabbed Baywan's arm. It was a middle-aged woman, her hair gray, and her face thin from months of captivity. "They're studying us," she whispered, "trying to understand how we think, how we work. They said we were ... specimens." The word hit Baywan like a physical blow. Specimens. These creatures had treated human beings like laboratory animals, cutting into them, testing them, learning from them. His anger burned hotter than ever. "How many more?" he asked the woman. "Thousands," she replied. "Level after level, all through this place. They're keeping us alive for their experiments." Baywan opened his radio channel to the other boarding teams. "All squads, this is Sergeant Bay. The prisoners have been experimented on. We need medical teams standing by for immediate evacuation." Then he turned to his Marines. "You heard the lady. Thousands more people need our help. Let's go get them." The alien facility was dying around them. Explosions rocked the massive structure as human boarding teams pushed deeper into its core, rescuing prisoners and planting charges on critical systems. Admiral Ho watched from the bridge of the Soul's Pride as sections of the facility went dark, their twisted metal corridors finally falling silent. "Admiral, we're tracking the last harvester ships," reported his tactical officer. 6 vessels fleeing toward the outer system. Ho nodded grimly. "Let them go. They can carry word back to whatever masters sent them. Humanity is not prey." The rescue operation was the largest evacuation in human history. Hospital ships that had been converted cargo haulers worked alongside military medical vessels, processing a steady stream of survivors from the alien prison. The numbers kept climbing. 700,000. 750,000. 800,000 people pulled from the nightmare facility. Each rescue told the same horrifying story. The harvesters had been studying humans like laboratory specimens, running experiments to understand human biology, psychology, and behavior. Some prisoners had been held for years, others for just weeks. All of them bore the psychological scars of captivity. But they were alive. Ho walked through the medical bay of his flagship, checking on the survivors. Most were weak from months of captivity, their eyes holding memories no one should have to carry. But they were human, they were free, and they were going home. In one of the medical beds, he found Commander Park Jin, the officer whose desperate transmission had started this whole mission. Jin looked terrible, thin, pale, with the haunted expression of someone who had seen too much. But when he spotted Admiral Ho approaching, he struggled to sit up and give a weak salute. "Commander Park," Ho said gently, returning the salute. "You're safe now. Your message saved a lot of lives." Jin's voice was barely a whisper. "I never thought anyone would come. There were so many of us in there, Admiral. Families, children, people from colonies I'd never even heard of. We found them," Ho assured him. "Nearly 800,000 survivors. The biggest rescue mission in human history." Jin closed his eyes, tears running down his cheeks. "My crew, most of them didn't make it. The aliens, they took the healthiest ones first for their experiments." Ho placed a hand on Jin's shoulder. "You kept the others alive, Commander. You gave them hope when they had nothing else. That's what leaders do." As the last of the facility's sections collapsed into twisted metal, Ho returned to his bridge. The evacuation was nearly complete. Medical ships were already jumping back toward human space with the first loads of survivors. The improvised fleet that had answered his call was preparing for the long journey home. Captain Kong Su's voice came over the fleet channel from her cargo hauler. "Admiral, this is Iron Mountain. We've got 200 survivors aboard, and we're ready for jump." Similar reports came in from across the fleet. Ships that had started this journey as cargo haulers, mining vessels, and passenger liners were now heading home as rescue ships, carrying precious human cargo back to safety. Ho opened a fleet-wide channel for the last time. "All ships, this is Admiral Yang Ho. Today we proved something important. No human will be left behind. No matter how far we have to travel, no matter what we have to face, we protect our own." The jump to hyperspace was different this time. They weren't chasing an unknown enemy into dark space anymore. They were bringing their people home, carrying with them the knowledge that humanity would never again be seen as easy prey. The galaxy had been put on notice.